Before we begin, comment your country so I know where the story is reaching. The morning light crawled slowly across the dry basin outside Buckthorn Ridge, touching the land the way a tired hand brushes over an old scar. Coyotes were still heading back to their dens. Dust trailed behind a single rider moving west, his horse slow but steady. That rider was Arden Cole, a rancher most folks barely noticed. He liked it that way. A quiet man with a quiet ranch, the kind who carried mistakes from years ago and never said a word about them. But that morning, silence broke long before he reached town. A crowd was gathered near the old freight platform. Rough men, bar drifters, a few townsfolk trying not to stare too long but staring anyway. Arden wasn't the curious type, yet something in the air felt wrong. Heavy, unsettled, like the desert itself was holding its breath. He dismounted, tied his reins loosely, and walked toward the murmur of voices. Then he saw it. 5 Apache girls, no more than late teens to mid-20s, hung upside down from a split beam, wrists bound, ankles lashed so tight their skin had darkened. Their dresses were torn, their hair dragging in the dust, their breaths trembling like thin threads ready to snap. The oldest had a streak of gray near her temple, not from age, but from stress born too young. The youngest couldn't have been more than 16, shoulders shaking each time she exhaled. Every pair of eyes watching them carried the same thought. They weren't meant to survive a day. Arden froze. His jaw tightened. His heartbeat didn't race. It just sank deeper into his chest. The scene felt familiar in the worst possible way. Years ago, he'd stumbled upon another group treated the same, and he had ridden away like a coward. That decision had never stopped clawing his conscience. This time, he didn't look away. A trader stepped forward, boasting loud enough for the crowd. Caught 'em yesterday near the border. Wild ones. Troublemakers. Thought we'd teach 'em some manners before the soldiers arrive. The crowd laughed. Arden didn't. His eyes drifted back to the oldest girl. Her face was calm, not empty, not broken, but carrying a quiet refusal to be erased. She met his gaze without flinching, even while her body trembled from the blood rushing into her head. Something inside him shifted. Not pity, not guilt. Something sharper. Something that felt like a line finally being drawn after years of walking in circles. He stepped forward. Cut them down. The laughter stopped. The trader blinked. You deaf, rancher? These girls aren't worth the trouble. Soldiers pay good coin for prisoners. Arden didn't raise his voice. Didn't repeat himself. Cut them down. A few men snickered. One spat at the ground. Another cracked his knuckles like he wanted Arden to force the issue. But Arden wasn't posturing. He looked like a man who had already decided, long before stepping into that square, that he would not leave without them. The trader folded his arms. You paying, then? Arden loosened the leather pouch at his hip. It was all he had saved for winter feed, fencing repairs, every practical need a rancher should care about. He threw it at the man's feet. Silver coins spilled into the dust. The crowd murmured. The trader crouched, counting with sharp eyes. This is everything you own. Then it's enough, Arden said. The trader grinned. Greed always won when courage couldn't be bought. Fine. He motioned to 2 men. Knives slid out. The ropes were cut. The girls fell hard, coughing, grabbing their throats, disoriented but awake. Arden stepped back, giving them room. Not touching, not crowding, not acting like their savior. Just standing there, solid as the ground beneath them. The oldest girl, later he'd learn her name was Tala, lifted her head, studying him with a mix of caution and disbelief. None of the others spoke, but their expressions echoed a single question. Why would a stranger waste everything for us? Arden didn't answer, not because he refused, but because he didn't have the words yet. The trader waved him off. Take 'em and go, but don't bring 'em back if they turn on you. Arden didn't react. He simply nodded toward the water pump. The girls hesitated, then crawled toward it, limbs stiff from hanging, breath shallow from fear that hadn't eased yet. No one in Buckthorn Ridge tried to help them. No one stepped forward. The crowd simply dispersed, uncomfortable now that the spectacle had ended. Arden waited until the square was empty. Then he spoke quietly. You're free to walk any way you choose. But if you need a place to rest, my ranch is north of here. No drama. No lecture. just an open door. Tyler stood first, unsteady but unbroken. Her sisters followed, Esha, Liri, Nima, and the youngest, Rika. They exchanged glances, a language deeper than words, and finally nodded. They would follow him, not because they trusted him, but because fate sometimes pushes people together long before they understand why. By noon, they rode out of Buckthorn Ridge. The landscape widened, yellow grasses, long shadows, the sun beating down like a memory that refused to fade. The girls stayed close but silent. Arden didn't pry. The only sound was a creak of saddles, the wind brushing over dry ground, and the faint rhythmic breaths of survivors trying to steady themselves. Then, an hour before they reached the ranch, Rika whispered something that stopped Arden cold. "They took our families." The words were fragile, but the weight behind them was crushing. Ash added softly, "They raided our camp at night. The ones who weren't captured were forced into the canyon. We don't know who survived." Tyler's voice was low, steady, and impossibly tired. "We were being sent to Abaya. The others, we don't know where they are." Arden's hands tightened on the reins, because he finally understood why they had stared at him the way they did. Not with hope, but with a sinking certainty that their nightmare wasn't over, and the knowledge that one rancher wasn't enough to change the world. But maybe, just maybe, one rancher was enough to change their path. And maybe that was the only beginning fate intended. The ranch looked different as they approached it, at least to the 5 girls who had never seen a place so quiet that the wind sounded louder than the world. Arden's land stretched across open grass, a few cottonwoods near the creek, a weathered barn leaning like an old man waiting for conversation. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but it was safe, and safety is the rarest thing in the West. Arden dismounted first. "Water's in the trough. Rest. I'll bring blankets." Tyler helped the others down with slow, careful movements. Even exhausted, she carried herself like someone trained to protect. Nima stayed close to Rika, shielding her like a mother would child, though Arden still wasn't sure of their relation. Liri stared at everything with eyes that examined more than they admired. Escher walked with a limp she tried to hide. They didn't thank him. He didn't expect them to. Inside the ranch house, Arden laid out blankets near the hearth. He didn't offer his bed, not because he thought they didn't deserve it, but because he knew they wouldn't take anything that made them feel trapped or beholden. When he stepped back outside, he found Tyler waiting near the porch. "We won't stay long," she said. "We won't bring danger to your door." Arden kept his voice level. "You're not a burden." She studied him like she wasn't sure if he believed what he was saying, or if he even understood the danger tailing them. She finally asked, "Why did you do it? You don't know us." Arden didn't look away. "Because someone should have helped long before I got there." A flicker across her eyes, recognition of guilt she'd seen before in other men, but never on someone who acted to atone instead of making excuses. By evening, they were settled inside. They didn't sleep, though. Every creak of wood, every gust of wind sent their shoulders tightening at once. Survivors learn quickly that danger doesn't announce itself. Arden sat outside with a lantern, letting them keep space. He wasn't there to comfort, just to be present, a silent barrier between them and whatever might come through the night. When the moon rose, thin as a sliver of bone, the truth finally surfaced. Escher was the first to approach him. "They took more than us," she whispered. "They took our entire people. We were separated from the others." Liri added, "Our families, our little ones. We don't know where they are being taken." Nima's voice cracked. "They are alive. We feel it." Tyler stepped forward at last, steady and unsparing. "We need to find them, but we don't know where to start." Arden stared out across the plain. He didn't know these girls, didn't know their tribe, didn't know the trail, but he recognized one thing immediately. This wasn't a plea. It was a vow wrapped in desperation. He let the silence sit before answering. "You need direction, tracks clues, someone who's seen movement in the basin." Rika stepped forward, barely above a whisper. "Will you help?" Arden didn't rush his reply. Rushing gives false promises. The West had enough of those. "If I help," he said carefully, "I don't stop halfway." Tyler held his gaze. "We don't ask for half." He nodded once. "At sunrise, we start." The girls exchanged looks, relief edged with fear, but none questioned it. Dawn broke sharp and pale. Their first clue surfaced quicker than expected. On the far end of the property, near the creek, fresh wagon ruts cut through the mud. Not deep enough for freight wagons, not narrow enough for carts. Something in between, quick-moving, carrying weight but avoiding main roads. Leary crouched and touched the imprint. 2 days old, heading southeast. Escher pointed to faint boot tracks beside them. Men, not soldiers, not scouts. Nima's voice tightened. Traders. Tyler straightened. Then they are still moving the ones they captured. Arden studied the tracks. If they are traders, they camped near water routes. There's a narrow riverbed cutting through the Silver Basin. They might rest there. Tyler nodded. We follow. But Arden hesitated, not at the mission, but at something else. You need to understand, he said slowly. This trail, it doesn't stop at water camps. Men like these move fast. They don't treat people kindly. Tyler didn't flinch. We are not asking you to protect us. Arden met her eyes. I didn't say you needed protecting. A brief silence settled, an understanding that neither side needed saving, only support. They packed light. A few blankets, dried meat, water, ropes, Arden's rifle, Leary's bow, Tyler's hidden obsidian blade. No promises, just purpose. By mid-morning they were miles out, following the wagon lines cutting through the land like scars across old skin. The girls moved with practiced silence, their eyes reading every shift of date, every broken twig, every displaced pebble. Arden found himself trailing behind sometimes, not because he was slow, but because he kept watching them, seeing how grief sharpened into determination. Around midday, they reached a shallow ridge overlooking a dry wash. Smoke trailed in the distance. Not a fire big enough to signal a camp. Just a dead ember left behind. They hurried down. Rika knelt and picked up something from the date, a piece of beaded cloth. Her hand shook. My sister made this. Escher touched her shoulder gently. Tyler checked the footprints. They weren't moving in a group. They are splitting them up. Arden cursed it under his breath. Breaking groups made selling easier. Harder to track. The girls deserved honesty, not false reassurance. Rika wiped her eyes. We have to hurry. They pressed on. Minutes turned into hours. Hours into a sinking dread. Just when Arden thought they'd lost the trail, Nima pointed suddenly to a narrow cut through the rock. There! Arden crouched. He saw it, faint marks from dragging something heavy, and a smaller footprint beside it. Too small to be an adult. A child. Leary squinted at the trail, then whispered, They didn't split all of them. They are taking the young ones ahead. Arden felt that old sting of guilt again. Children put into chains always hit hardest. Tyler stood. Her voice was low and fierce. We follow until we catch them. Arden didn't argue, but as they stepped forward, something cold and sharp rolled across the air, an instinct more than a sound. Leary noticed it first. She froze, hand up, then Escher heard it, then Arden. Wagon wheels. Close. Too close. They ducked behind boulders just as a caravan appeared. 3 wagons, 2 riders, and a man walking beside them with a whip hanging casually at his hip. Arden watched carefully. No cages. Long, heavy crates. Tyler whispered, Are they inside? Arden shook his head. No. Those crates hold supplies. Tools. Trade goods. Nima scanned the horizon. If these men are heading north, then the ones with our people are heading south, Arden finished. Tyler's jaw tightened. Then we turned south. But Arden held up a hand. Wait! He pointed at the 3rd wagon, the slowest, which was struggling over the uneven ground. That wagon wasn't carrying tools. The boards bowed slightly. The wheels dragged deeper. Something heavy was inside. Something alive. Rika whispered, voice trembling. How do we get close? Arden watched the wagons roll by, slow and unsuspecting. We don't rush in, he said. We watch where they camp. But the truth, unspoken, sat heavy on all of them. One wrong move, and the last people they loved might disappear forever. The trail wasn't dangerous because of the land. It was dangerous because hope, once found, can be lost again in a single heartbeat, and they all knew that losing it a second time might destroy them completely. If you're still here, make sure to like and subscribe so more Western stories reach you every week. Night crept over the desert like a slow tide of ink, swallowing the last gold light from the ridge. Arden and the 5 Apache girls crouched behind a cluster of boulders, watching the caravan settle into its camp below. 2 riders tied their horses. 1 man tossed firewood into a pit. The 3rd wagon, the one way down, was parked farther from the fire, as if the men didn't want to listen to whatever shifted inside it. Tyler watched them with a stare so still it felt carved from stone. "There are only 3, she whispered. "But that wagon, we don't know who's in it." Arden didn't blink. "We don't rush. We wait for the fire to die down." Nima tapped the ground with 2 fingers, thinking. If they have children inside, they might be gagged. They won't be able to call out. Rika swallowed. Her voice was a thin thread. "They'll be scared." Arden tightened his grip on the rifle. "Then let's make sure fear ends tonight." The hours crawled. Coyotes howled far off. The men drank, laughed, argued, then finally staggered into their bedrolls. Only the one with the whip took first watch, but exhaustion beat even his discipline. His head lolled. His eyelids sagged. Tyler leaned close to Arden. "Now!" They moved like shadows. Lyri circled wide with her bow drawn. Esha and Nima followed behind Tyler, stepping silently between patches of moonlit soil. Arden broke off toward the side of the heavy wagon, keeping low. He reached the back, slid his fingers beneath the latch, and paused. Tyler appeared beside him. "On your mark." Arden whispered, 1, 2, 3. The latch clicked. The door creaked open. A faint rustle came from inside. A tiny gasp. Then wide, terrified eyes looked up at them. 5 small Apache children, huddled together, wrists bound, dust covering their faces. The moment they recognized Tyler, all fear shattered. They crawled forward, whispering her name. Tyler caught the first child in her arms. She didn't sob. She didn't collapse. She just held them with a trembling intensity that broke Arden more than any tears could have. Asha and Nima quickly loosened the bindings. Rika covered the children with a blanket. Arden kept his eyes on the camp. The watchman still slept. The other 2 snored near the fire. "We take them and leave," he whispered. Tyler shook her head. "They'll follow us. They'll bring more." Arden didn't deny it. "They will." Lyri appeared from the shadows. "We cannot run forever." Nima looked at Arden. "What do we do?" He didn't speak for a long moment. Then, "We make sure they can't follow. Not with bloodshed, not with chaos, but with reason." Arden walked into the camp alone, rifle lowered, hands open. The girls froze, thinking he was doing something reckless. But they watched anyway. He kicked the sleeping watchman gently. The man jolted up, reaching for his weapon. But Arden pointed his rifle between the man's eyes before he could move. The other 2 woke, startled, confused, scrambling to grab their guns. Arden didn't fire, didn't threaten. He simply said, "You're done." The men froze. Something in his voice, calm, controlled, final, cut deeper than shouting would. Arden nodded toward the wagon. "You're not trading children anymore. You're not carrying them. You're not taking them south. You're leaving this territory tonight, empty-handed." 1 man stumbled to his feet. "We'll be hunted." Tyler stepped beside Arden, the obsidian blade in her hand glinting faintly. "Only if you choose wrong." The men looked at her, at the silent, unbreakable rage in her eyes, and understood at once she wasn't bluffing. Arden pointed toward the open wilderness. "There's a crossing west. Head there. You'll reach the border in 2 days. You leave now. You live. You stay." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The men gathered their essentials and rode out of camp without daring to look back. When the dust settled and their silhouettes vanished, Tyler let out a breath she'd been holding for hours. "You didn't kill them." Arden holstered his rifle. "Your people have enough ghosts." That answer sat with him longer than the desert night. By sunrise, the rescued children were packed onto Arden's horses. They rode north toward the ranch, exhausted but safe. The little ones held tight to the older girls, and sometimes to Arden's coat. Rika sat behind him, head resting lightly against his back. Halfway home, Tyler rode up alongside him. Her voice was low, not cold anymore, more like someone trying to understand a person she never expected to trust. "You didn't have to help us," she said. "Not after everything you saw, everything you lost." Arden kept his eyes forward. "I did nothing years ago. I won't repeat that mistake." Tyler studied him. "Guilt is not strength." "No," he said, "but learning from it is." She rode in silence for a moment. Then she said, "You ride like a man who stopped running from past." Arden didn't respond, but she saw the answer in the way he held the reins, steady, grounded, certain. When they reached the ranch, the children spilled out, wandering the yard as if it were the first safe land they'd touched in months. Escher fetched water. Nima found fresh clothes. Leary set blankets in the barn. Tyler oversaw everything without raising her voice. Arden watched them rebuild the smallest pieces of normal life. It felt like watching dawn return to a land long stuck in dusk. Rika tugged at his sleeve. "Are we staying here?" Arden knelt to her level. "You can stay as long as you need." She nodded slowly, as if deciding this ranch, this quiet land, might finally be a place where childhood could breathe. That evening, Tyler approached him at the corral. The sky behind her burned orange, fading into purple. She folded her arms, not guarded, just thoughtful. "You gave us more than a place to rest," she said. "You helped us find our own." Arden leaned on the post. "You made it possible. I just rode along." Tyler's expression softened. "You stood when others didn't. That matters." A pause. Warm, heavy, honest. Then she said, "We're not leaving tonight. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not for a while." Arden nodded once. "Good." No promises. No declarations. But the space between them changed, quietly, like a shift in the wind. And sometimes that's all beginning needs. A week later, laughter filled the ranch. Children ran between the trees. The girls worked together repairing the broken barn door. Arden stacked hay while listening to the soft hum of voices that had once been silenced. For the first time in years, the land didn't feel empty. Tyler stood beside him, watching the children chase each other. "They are healing," she said softly. "So are you," Arden replied. She didn't deny it. He turned to her. "You all can stay, for as long as you want. This is your home as much as mine." Tyler's lips curved, not a smile, but something close, something rare. "We accept." The wind picked up, brushing dust across the yard, but it didn't feel harsh. It felt like the land breathing again. The West had a cruel heart, but sometimes, if enough broken people walked the same path, it softened just enough to let hope take root. Arden had saved 5 girls. They had saved 15 children. And somehow, in the middle of a land that swallowed most souls, they saved each other, not with grand gestures, but with everyday choices, the kind that shape a future no one expected, the kind that build something stronger than survival, a life worth keeping, a place worth returning to, a beginning worth believing in.